All right, everybody, welcome back to another deep dive with me. And as always, I've got my expert here with me.
Hey, everybody.
And today we are tackling a question that is probably one that keeps a lot of people up at night and one that a lot of people have to actually deal with at some point in their lives.
Yeah.
And that is the question of government job versus private sector job.
It's a classic.
It is a classic.
Yeah.
So to really dig into this, we found this really fun YouTube video, and it's on the Guess IT Right channel.
I love that channel.
It's a really great channel, and they do these would you rather videos, but they're kind of career oriented would you rather videos. And so this one is all about a recent graduate named Ravi, and he is trying to decide between a government job and a private sector job.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we thought this would be a good way to kind of frame this discussion.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through some of the stuff that's in the video, and then obviously give you our insights as well. Okay, so one of the things that the video really digs into is all the perks of working for the government. And there are a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the big ones that they talk about are stability and benefits.
Yeah.
Like amazing benefits.
You hear that a lot.
Yeah. And the work-life balance, which is,
Music to everybody's ears.
Yeah, exactly. I think these days especially, that is something that is very coveted.
Yeah.
So that all sounds great, right?
But
there's always
there's always trade-offs, right?
There are always trade-offs.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that they highlight in the video as far as trade-offs for a government job?
Well, they say one of the biggest ones is the pay isn't quite as good as in the private sector.
Right.
And that's something that people have to really think about.
For sure.
Like, how important is that to them?
Yeah. Yeah, and they also talk about how, the growth might be a little bit slower at a government job and the structure might be a little more rigid.
Yeah, I was going to say it can be pretty bureaucratic.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great point. And it's something that's not really addressed in the video, but is worth mentioning, is that when we talk about government jobs, we're talking about this massive umbrella, right?
It's huge. Yeah.
Like
you could be working at, the DMV. You could be working like at a national park.
Yeah.
You could be working at like the EPA.
Right.
Like it's so many different kinds of things.
It's a massive range.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, when we talk about private sector, that's also not monolithic.
No.
Right? Like working for a tiny little startup is going to be very different from working for, a massive multinational corporation.
Absolutely.
But there are some common threads, I think, that the video does a good job of highlighting. And that is, you're probably going to get paid more in the private sector.
Yeah.
You're probably going to, see quicker career growth.
That's the hope.
Yeah, that's the hope. And then it's probably going to be a little bit more dynamic of an environment, I think, generally. But of course, with those perks come the downsides, which are probably less job security.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more high pressure.
More pressure.
And probably maybe less emphasis on work-life balance.
Yeah, I think that's a big one.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're kind of expected to be available all the time a lot of places.
Yeah, exactly.
And to answer emails at, midnight and...
Right. And so it really comes down to, what are your individual preferences?
Yeah.
What are your priorities?
Yeah, what's important to you?
And speaking of priorities, one of the things that the video talks about is passion. And how Ravi was really drawn to a certain path because of what he was really passionate about. Yeah,
he loved the idea of working in, I think it was renewable energy or something.
Yeah, something like that. And I think that's so important. So I think a lot of times people get so caught up in, the salary and
the benefits.
The benefits, the stability.
All of that.
That they forget about, like...
what they really want to do.
What lights them up.
Yeah.
What do they enjoy doing? And I think that's a really important thing for our listeners to think about. Like, how do you even figure out?
That's a good question.
What you're passionate about?
How do you figure out what you're passionate about?
Yeah.
Well, I think a good way to start is to think about what are the things that you do that make you lose track of time. Like what are the things that you get so engrossed in that you forget to eat.
Right.
You forget to, go to the bathroom, whatever.
You're just in the flow.
Yeah. And it's probably something you're passionate about if you like doing it that much.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think another thing is to think about, like, what are you naturally good at?
Yeah.
Like what comes easily to you?
Yeah, what do people come to you for?
Yeah. And it might not be something that, is like a traditional job or career.
Right.
It might be something that you're like, oh, I'm really good at, organizing events or something like that.
Or I'm really good at, helping people with their taxes,
right.
whatever it is,
Right.
And then you can be like, okay, well, how can I turn that into a job?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I think, I've always been a little bit hesitant about government jobs just because I'm not a huge fan of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that our listeners should think about as well, is like
tolerance for red tape.
Yeah, their tolerance for that, because even if it's not a government job, even if it's a large corporation,
you're going to have some of that.
There's going to be bureaucracies, right?
Yeah.
So how do you even assess that?
Yeah.
What's your tolerance for that?
Well, I think the best way is to think about past jobs you've had, or, volunteer experiences or anything where you've been part of an organization, and think about, like, did you like having a really clear chain of command? Did you like knowing exactly what the procedures were for everything? Or did you prefer to have more autonomy and to kind of figure things out on your own?
Right.
And there's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
It's just about what works for you.
Exactly.
Because, some people love knowing exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And how to do it. And that's fine.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So taking all of this into account, so we've talked about, the pros and cons of each path.
Yeah.
We've talked about, your passion.
Yeah.
We've talked about bureaucracy and structure. Like, at the end of the day, when you're weighing this decision of government versus private sector, what do you think are the most important things for our listener to really prioritize?
I think the most important thing, honestly, is to prioritize your values.
Okay.
Like, does a mission-driven role in public service really resonate with you? Or are you more drawn to innovation and entrepreneurship in the private sector?
Yeah.
Like, those are really big questions that you have to ask yourself.
For sure.
And I think you also have to think about, like, your long-term goals.
Yeah.
Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years and 10 years?
Right.
What kind of impact do you want to have on the world?
That's a great point.
Those are all things that I think are even more important than the salary.
Yeah, I agree.
With the benefits or
the day-to-day.
all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. This has been such a great conversation.
Yeah.
Do you have any final words of wisdom?
Final words of wisdom
for our listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think I would just say, remember that, like, your early career choices don't define your entire trajectory.
That's a good point.
People switch paths all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. I mean, I know people who started out in the government and then went to the private sector and vice versa. So you're not locked into anything. Just because you take a government job now doesn't mean you can't go to the private sector later.
Absolutely.
Or vice versa.
Absolutely.
So stay adaptable, Yeah. Keep learning. And don't be afraid to pivot.
Yeah.
If your interests or priorities change.
I love that. Yeah, that's great advice. And I think, we would be remiss if we didn't at least mention the whole, elephant in the room, which is automation and how AI is impacting
everything.
All of this.
Yeah, the whole job market.
Yeah. So as you're thinking about, all of this and making these decisions, it's good to kind of
keep that in mind.
And think about, how is that going to affect your job, whether it's government or private sector?
Yeah, because it's going to affect both.
It is.
For sure.
Yeah. And in ways that we can't even really predict right now.
Right. Who knows?
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
Yeah. So that's a great point to leave us with. So as always, if you are interested in checking out more of these Would You Rather videos, I highly recommend the Guess IT Right YouTube channel.
Yeah.
They got a lot of great stuff on there. But above all, I think the biggest takeaway is to do your research.
Yeah.
Be self-aware and really just think about what's going to be the best fit for you.
What's going to make you happy?
What's going to make you happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.